Well, the big story that we're leading with tonight is a critical announcement that's bringing hope to millions of people around the world. One of the leading drug manufacturers has announced this evening that it's getting positive results with tests of a known antiviral drug. Well, Vishnu Shom joining us with more on that. Now, Vishnu, take us through these details. Of course, we will be cautiously optimistic, I suppose, at this stage because it's still a trial.
Yeah, we have to be cautious about this, but it's been picked up by Reuters now, and they are basing their results on a detailed press note where they've actually spelt out what it is that they've achieved. So what exactly are we talking about at this stage? Well, we are talking about a drug called Remdesivir. Now, this is from a company called Gilead. Now, Gilead's survey suggests, and I'm just reading off the Reuters copy here, that 62% of patients treated early with Remdesivir were discharged from hospital compared with 49% of patients who were treated late. That's point number one. Point number two, the trial was a phase 3 trial. In other words, it was a trial with humans. They were testing 397 patients and they were evaluating the drug if administered for 5 days, and they were evaluating the trials if the drug was administered for a period of 10 days. Now, the Dow Jones has done very well on opening as a result of these results. The stock of this particular company has soared. Now, it needs to be mentioned that there was an earlier report which indicated that Remdesivir had not worked, that had been taken by the World Health Organization, which subsequently dropped that particular report because it was based earlier on incomplete data. On this particular occasion, Gilead Sciences, which has made the drug, have actually said that this is what we have. This is the detailed breakthrough. They've released a detailed medical note, and they say that further confirmation of the success of this drug will also come from US official sources, which they expect in a short period from now. So, Nidhi, is this really the cure? We really need to wait and see, but it seems to be a promising line of treatment. This, along with vaccines, in the long run, could be what we're looking for.
All right, let's hope so. Fingers crossed. Thanks very much for that, Vishnu. So any good news at this point is something we will welcome because it is going to be a tough and long battle against COVID-19. Now, if you look at the overall cases around the world today, India is now among the top 15 countries with the maximum coronavirus cases. Of course, the US still far ahead of everyone else. It's on the top of the charts, followed by Spain, Italy, France, the UK, Germany at 6, and India now entering the top 15 just as it has crossed 30,000 cases in the last 24 hours or so. Now, let's take a look at the death rates in India, because by and large, compared to the rest of the world, India's death rate is at about 3.1, 3.2%. That's what the health minister has said, as compared to around 7% the world over. But within India, if you look at the comparison of the key states, that is Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Gujarat, they have the higher death rates. Their averages are all higher than the national death rate of 3.2%. Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh actually the highest, followed by Gujarat and then Maharashtra. And if you look at the flip side, the states that have lower death rates, much lower than what the national numbers are, you see that Delhi is among those, although you have a large number of cases in Delhi, but Tamil Nadu and Jammu and Kashmir as well have shown very, very low death rates at less than 2% or just over 1% as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned. Now, we are just days away from the end of lockdown 2.0, and it is almost certain that we're going to continue to see some kind of a lockdown even after the 3rd of May, but with more relaxations. I'd just like to read out a tweet from the Home Ministry that came just before we went on air. The Home Ministry saying that new guidelines will come into effect from the 4th of May, which shall give considerable relaxations to many districts. Details will be communicated in the next few days. My colleague Sanket Upadhyay joining us now for more on that. So Sanket, clear indications now from the Ministry of Home Affairs that expect some more relaxations, maybe not for the red zones, but for other zones.
Absolutely. And in effect, this clearly means, Nidhi, that this is not a complete lifting of the lockdown. There will not be an immediate unlocking of the lockdown. You will have a gradual exit from this lockdown, because the final decision has to be taken by the Prime Minister. Now, will he also make an announcement on the 3rd of May when lockdown 2.0 will get over? We'll only know on that day. But the 36th day of lockdown, which is presently on, the government has allowed movements of migrants and students. Now, this if you read this in conjunction with what Nidhi told you just a short while ago, that more such relaxations are on the way, this is a clear indication that most states now are pressing for lockdown extension in the 4th CM-PM meet. And while that is happening, these states have also said that they want a gradual relaxation. This is in league with what the Home Ministry seems to be saying at this moment. Now, if you recall, on the very second meeting of the GOM, or the group of ministers headed by Rajnath Singh, a senior minister in the government, they recommended that the lockdown extension be there till the 15th of May. It is only post this recommendation and also the recommendation of all the chief ministers that the Prime Minister decided to extend it till the 3rd of May and not the 15th. However, the GOM's decision of keeping it on till the 15th still remains, with, of course, reasonable easing of restrictions. Now, Home Ministry is likely to announce these relaxations in a phased manner, as has been confirmed in that tweet that Nidhi just read out just a short while ago. So it's going to be gradual, it's going to be in a phased manner, it is not going to be immediate. So be rest assured that the new normal after the 3rd of May is going to be gradual easing of restrictions. And that's the tweet that Nidhi was talking about. It says new guidelines to fight COVID-19 will come into effect from the 4th of May, which shall give considerable relaxations to many districts. So it is very clear, Nidhi, that this is how the unlocking of the lockdown plan is going to work.
I want to quickly ask you though, this whole decision to suddenly allow migrants and other people who are stranded to travel back home, that's come after weeks of intense criticism.
36 days.
Yeah, a lot of criticism that this should have actually happened a month ago. So what forced the government to change its mind at this point?
On the face of it, Nidhi, very interesting question. On the face of it, you've got a Nitish Kumar who's now all gung-ho and saying that, see, I'm the reason, I put the pressure. I'm the reason why the government has decided to let these buses go and get the migrant workers. However, the reality is the unseen. And the unseen reality is an inside track on why the government opened up. This is an NDTV exclusive. Sources say that it was not just the Bihar Chief Minister, but there was pressure from within the BJP, where leaders were giving constant feedback to the leadership. That means regional leaders of the BJP were constantly giving feedback to the central leadership, to the various ministers, to JP Nadda, who has been on a con call as well as a video conferencing with all state leaders. Migrant crisis, and this is what the people told all the senior leadership in Delhi, that the migrant crisis and the way it is playing out is going to damage us politically. So take a decision urgently. It does not make for good politics that you let so many people, keep them locked down and allow movement of maybe students. So this feedback which was given by MPs and MLAs, Nidhi, is what did the government in.
All right, Sanket, thanks very much for that. So let's see what relaxations are given now. We're just days away from that. At least we are heading towards an unwinding of some sort of this very tough lockdown that we have seen. Though if you're living in a red zone like we are here in Delhi, don't expect a lot to change just yet. Let's see what actually happens. Now, you know, it's pictures like these that we're about to play out for you. Pictures like these of people walking hundreds of kilometers to get home, which makes this order by the Home Ministry so important today. This man has been carrying a small child for days now. He has to go to Chhattisgarh from Telangana and has been walking in this heat for the last 3 days, periodically being stopped by the police. So, you know, remember that this order today by the Home Ministry is so important for the many thousands of people like him who have had no choice but to start going back home on foot. Many of them, in fact, dying even before they can reach home. Well, lots to talk about tonight, especially on what medical breakthroughs could possibly be achieved and the road ahead. We're joined tonight by Dr. Saira Madad. She's an infectious diseases specialist from New York and recently featured in the Netflix docuseries Pandemic. Dr. Madad, thank you so much for joining us on NDTV this evening. If I could ask you first, you yourself are a survivor of COVID-19. You got the infection, you've come out of it. Can you tell us about your own experience, what you went through and how you're feeling now?
First, thank you for having me on. You certainly, with COVID-19 and knowing that, you're positive, it's obviously a scary feeling because this is a novel virus and there's so much that we still don't know about this particular disease. also considering how wide of a spectrum of illness, coronavirus actually has. And on top of that, the different manifestations. So a lot of people you're seeing obviously have mild cases, but even in those mild cases, they are experiencing a phenomena where they may lose a sense of taste and smell, a number of other obviously clinical signs and symptoms that may manifest. For me in particular, the first few days were rough, and then luckily it was a mild case, but I did lose my sense of taste and smell for about 3 weeks. I recently just got it back about a week or so ago. I live in a house with my own family. I have a 3-month-old baby, and I have 2 boys, and also, I have in-laws. And so it's obviously a scary feeling because you want to make sure you're protecting everybody. But luckily, everybody's doing well. And, it's one of those things. I think we were very lucky that no one had a severe case.
Well, Dr. Madad, we were just getting news just before we went on air tonight about Gilead announcing that it may have achieved a breakthrough in the Remdesivir trials for treating the coronavirus. Now, of course, it's still a trial, and I guess we'll have to wait and see, whether more trials are conducted and how those go. But are you cautiously optimistic about their announcement just under an hour ago?
Certainly, I am very cautiously optimistic, and I think that's a good way to put it because, I don't think Remdesivir is going to be the magic bullet that we're looking for. Certainly, it looks very promising. The golden standard, obviously, is a randomized controlled trial to actually see if this particular pharmaceutical, medication is successful and how effective it is. I think we also need to look and see how the study was conducted and then what the outcome is, both those that have mild illnesses and those that have severe or critical illnesses. At the same time, also looking to see when this drug is most effective. Is it early on in the course of the disease, or is it later on? So as you know, with Tamiflu, another antiviral medication, the earlier you take it, the better the outcome, if you will. So we really have to see, what this means. It looks very promising, but at the same time, we need to get some more information in terms of how it could be administered and how effective it could be.
You were mentioning to us some of the symptoms that you experienced when you got COVID-19, among them being the loss of taste and smell. Now, we saw that the CDC in the US the day before yesterday, put out a list of new symptoms that people should watch out for. Among them was the loss of smell. There was also, headaches, chills. Now, I just had a question that what does that mean exactly? Because, if I get a headache tomorrow, someone just gets a headache, does that mean we should think we have the coronavirus and get tested? Or would it have to be, a headache plus, a symptom 1, 2, and 3? How does this work exactly?
So not necessarily, just because, so I think first, it's important to put into context where you are. So if you're in a geographical location where you have widespread community transmission of COVID-19, I think it's good to assume that if you become symptomatic, whether you have headache, fever, just a cough, I think it's just always good to assume that you may have coronavirus disease, and you should implement the measures that we're asking everybody to do, which means isolate yourself, don't come in contact with other individuals, obviously continue to take care of yourself. But I think depending on where you're located, if you're located in an area where there is no community transmission and you come down with a headache, then obviously it's a different story. But if you're in a particular geographical location, like for here in the state of New York, what we're telling everybody is we should already act as if we have COVID-19. So you need to continue to isolate yourself. And this is where it's also important to socially distance yourself and so on and so forth. But I think a really big, recommendation there is making sure that you follow up with your healthcare provider. So if you think that you're symptomatic, then certainly you want to follow up and see if you're a candidate to get tested, depending on obviously where you're at, where you're located.
But the thing is that when you have a symptom like a headache listed in a list of symptoms, it's so vague and so general. Now, one gets headaches all the time. So is there a sort of a metric by which you'd measure when one has to get concerned? Would it have to be, for instance, a constant headache, a throbbing headache, accompanied by a cough and maybe some chills? Or if it's a headache that goes away with a paracetamol, does it mean we're okay?
So, if you have a mild version of coronavirus disease, so if you have a headache, cough, something that you can tolerate, so you may not need to get tested. You just want to make sure that you isolate yourself, obviously, for a certain period of time, so that way you don't start new chains of transmission. But the point where you want to obviously make sure you get healthcare services is if you start experiencing shortness of breath, because that's a telltale sign that that you're going to need potentially additional healthcare services. So just having mild signs and symptoms, just a cough or headache by itself, may just mean obviously you have a mild case and you may not need to see a healthcare professional. We want to make sure, similarly here in the United States, and I'm sure even in India, that we want to reserve hospitals and healthcare services for those that truly need it. So if everybody that has a headache goes to these hospitals and healthcare clinics, then you're going to obviously get overwhelmed. And so you want to make sure you're reserving it for those that critically need it. So those that maybe experience shortness of breath and other more severe signs and symptoms should obviously seek healthcare services. But at the same time, it's also important to make sure that you're in contact with your healthcare provider. So even though you have a cough and a headache and you have a mild version, it's always good just to consult your healthcare provider to see if there's an additional step that you should take, because it also depends on your own clinical condition. Maybe you have underlying health conditions that may warrant that you seek healthcare services sooner.
My final question, Dr. Madad, is about the lockdowns and when it's the right time to actually lift them. Now, we've heard Dr. Fauci say in the US that he's worried about another wave of infections in the fall and in the winter. Is that something that you think the whole world needs to be concerned about? And we also can't live in perpetual lockdowns. So what's the road ahead going to look like for the next few months?
Look, no one likes to be obviously in a lockdown, in a situation where we're, confined in our home, and it's having impact not only on the economy, but also our own social well-being. So no one wants to obviously put anyone in that position. At the same time, it's needed because we need to make sure that we're reducing mortality or morbidity. Right now, since the coronavirus disease started obviously in late December, early January, there hasn't been a whole lot done in terms of treatment options, right? So we have a number of things in clinical trials. We have obviously something like Remdesivir that looks promising, but nothing is a magic bullet. We have monoclonal antibodies that also look very promising. We don't have a vaccine yet. And so one of our most effective methods right now to reduce morbidity and mortality is social distancing. And so I think we need to have a very methodical approach if we want to start opening up various areas. And there needs to have a system and infrastructure in place, like having testing available, so that way if somebody thinks that they need to get tested, if they're symptomatic, that they're offered the test and they can then isolate themselves, and then we can contact trace. And so we need to have a good infrastructure in place in order for us to obviously start opening society up.
All right, I think that's the key. Thank you so much, Dr. Madad, and we're really happy that you recovered from this and you're well. Thanks so much for joining us on NDTV this evening.
Thank you.
One of the states in India that seems to have done pretty well as far as the coronavirus is concerned is Telangana. And if we could just bring up that graphic for you, one of the most important statistics is how fast the number of coronavirus cases are actually doubling. So if they're doubling every 2 days, that's not good. But if the doubling rate is actually many days longer, that means it's not spreading as fast. And that is the success story in Telangana, where the new cases are doubling every 70 days now. The all India average is about 12 days now, but 70 days in Telangana, and the number of new cases that are being reported are down to a trickle of single digits. I spoke earlier to KT Rama Rao, Senior Minister of the Telangana government, and Mr. KT Rama Rao, the Health Minister of Telangana, has said that your state will be completely COVID-free, down to 0 cases by the 8th of May, which is just some days away. How is that going to happen?
Well, let me put it this way. I think what our Honorable Health Minister was pointing out too was a downward trend that we have witnessed since the 22nd of April. In fact, the number of cases have now come down to a single-digit number. And we believe that we have been able to flatten the curve. And going forward, in fact, we have declared a lockdown until the 7th of May. So therefore, we believe that by the 7th of April, because a lot of people who are currently also under treatment, under hospitalization, will also be discharged by then. So hopefully, we can potentially, keeping our fingers crossed, of course, declare ourselves to be a COVID-free state. That's the expectation, that's the hope.
Sure, but how exactly are you going to achieve this? Because you've had a pretty tough lockdown in place already. Are you going to seal off specific districts as well? How will you do this?
Well, 2-3 things. In fact, containment has been by and large very effective. Quarantining, isolating, tracing, tracking the primary and secondary contacts and ensuring that the spread is contained. That has been the biggest effort where we've spent a lot of time and energy on. And by and large, because of all the efforts that we have made in the last month and a half or so, we've been able to narrow down. We've been able to now bring down the cases to almost 2 per day. Day before yesterday, and it was 6 yesterday. So hopefully it'll come down in numbers, and hopefully, as our Honorable Health Minister had pointed out, we could hopefully be a 0 case state by 7th or 8th because that's when the lockdown, that's the date of lockdown.
I do have a counter question though, because when you put such targets in place of 0 cases, there are also huge economic costs, and is that something you worried about? I mean, is there a plan that you have to take care of that?
No, of course. See, we are very conscious of the fact that lives are as important as livelihood post the COVID situation as well. So we have been working. Our essential services have been up and running, like in every other state in India, as per the guidelines of Government of India. Likewise, in fact, we also have been making sure that all the agriculture produced, because this is the harvesting time. We've opened more than 7,000 procurement centers across the state of Telangana. And we continue to procure from the farmers, and we continue to make sure that more than 60 lakh farmers in the state of Telangana are also taken care of. And while our healthcare, workers and our healthcare industry continues to grapple with the problem, continues to ensure that, we do our best in terms of those people who have contracted the virus. Simultaneously, we also are ensuring that economic activity in the essential services and at a minimal capacity in other sectors is also being restarted, as we speak. So therefore, we have, of course, an eye out on the economic fallout of the situation. But we, of course, would want more support. We would, of course, want more from Government of India in days to come.
Can I ask you, though, that are the low number of cases or the low number of positives in Telangana because you're not testing enough? Are you testing enough?
Well, if I may throw the question back at the rest of the states and country at large as well, is if we look at the number of tests in the country at large also, are we testing enough for a 1.3 billion country? I don't think there is a concrete answer as to what is the optimal number when it comes to testing. What percentage of the population needs to be tested, etc. We in Telangana have decided that we will not go for indiscriminate testing. We will in fact focus on ensuring that all the people, who have had a history, who have had, exhibited symptoms, etc., will be tested, and their primary contacts will also be tested. So we are not for testing indiscriminately, but we are testing in clusters and red zones or hotspots, as we call them, and we are testing adequately. It's not like we are under testing. We are testing at an adequate number, at an optimal number. And I believe, that is what many countries have adopted also.
All right, Mr. KT Rama Rao, that's all the time we have for this evening. Thanks very much for joining us. Hope that you are successful in that target to make Telangana COVID-free, and we hope that that's true for India and the rest of the world sooner rather than later as well. Thanks very much for joining us.